I think it makes good sense then to move on to item 7A, the discussion of the purchase and sale agreement with KEW. Casey, this is listed under your report, so if you would like to introduce the issue, please.
Sure. So this would be essentially what we're looking at is a conceptual plan in front of us, which would include KEW has come up with a plan to have 4 lots on the eastern or the western portion of the property, with the remaining 5th lot, an Outlot, on the western/central portion of the property. As has been indicated in the citizens' comments, Mr. Korndoerfer and Mr. and Mrs. Maurer have entered into an agreement with a deposit of earnest money for purchase of that Outlot, assuming that the board is on board with that particular conception of the sale. So it would essentially be, this would be a 4-lot single-family home development with an attached Outlot. Generally speaking, what we're looking for is the board's direct staff is looking for the board's direction if you want to move forward with this. And also,
it's very hard. Excuse me. It's very hard hearing you.
Okay, I just muted. I think the culprit. I'm sorry. There's obviously some items to be ironed out, some details. This does meet the purchase and sale agreement because the purchase and sale agreement places restrictions on how many single-family homes would be allowed under that agreement, which is 10 single-family lots and at least 40% green space. So both of these conditions are met.
It's up to 10 single-family.
Up to 10, correct, yeah. Or not more than 10, yeah, not more than 10 single-family. So it would be really, essentially it's not really that different from, any municipality approving a subdivision where you have conditions placed on outlots and or having the outlots be in, some sort of ownership, whether that be an HOA or something similar. So with that, I can answer any questions that the board may have.
Yes, I do. Yeah. With there's such feedback. When you were talking, it's very hard to understand, and I can feel the feedback here. Well,
can we ask one more time for everyone who is attending the meeting virtually other than the trustees to please mute their devices, please? I can hear Carmen. Can you mute your device? Okay, Janet, go ahead now. Let's try it again.
Okay. Those outlaws could be developed, correct?
It depends. So if you were to just approve, so what the process is going to be is if the board is okay with the conceptual plan here, the process will be is a tentative plat will be submitted to the board for review. Subsequently, it will then go to the Plan Commission for recommendation, and then go to the board for full review and final approval. With that, the outlot could simply just be an outlot, and there's no restrictions behind it, or could place restrictions on it. If the outlot doesn't have any restrictions placed on it, within the subdivisions, covenants, and deed restrictions, then it could potentially be redeveloped at some point in time, assuming that it can be, there are some issues with soil on the property, but it could be sold for future development purposes if it's just simply an outlot. Being an outlot in and of itself doesn't necessarily negate development on that property.
Okay. All right. I want to get very clear. I believe that the village should keep the outlaw at this point, and just if Korndoerfer wants to develop the other area, and I really think they could be condominiums. Okay. But I definitely am against sales because there will be issues down the road that, can be conditional use permits are going to have to be issued, and there's going to be a lot of conflict by those holding the outlot. So I strongly recommend the village keep those outlots for not.
Case, I think we could make it clear, if it isn't clear, that the eastern side of the property, that what would be an outlet, is buildable to a certain degree. Condos could be built there without basements. That is the property could be used for. So it's a similar condition to a number of, to what Angie Burwell was talking about, the condition of the property at 1.2. So are there any other, just clarifying, because it was mentioned in the public forum that they could not be built upon. They are buildable to a degree.
Yeah, that's correct. It would be kind of likely, in all likelihood, condominiums without basements would be the likely. And that could be Korndoerfer building those, that could be somebody else at some point in the future. Whether that's, ownership, different ownership, whether that's a group, that kind of depends. The preservation of the outlot would really be contingent upon, as I stated earlier, whether or not that there are deed restrictions placed on that lot. Again, deed restrictions can be undone as well too. In some instances, depending on how they're written. But it doesn't. The outlot in and of itself doesn't necessarily guarantee preservation of that lot as it was.
Yes, and I don't have concerns about the upkeep of the property. The preservation, we don't know what that means, what's going to happen in the future. So I do that it stay in the hands of you. If Korndoerfer doesn't want to develop at the time.
I think, Kate, why don't you answer the question that Alice and McCullough asked before? What is your plan for the property?
Well, I thank you, Susan. I would like to start out by saying that it would have been helpful to have sort of a heads up that I was going to be part of this conversation during this meeting at all. The village so far has owned this property. That's the thing. It's been owned by the village since 2017, and there hasn't been any upkeep. And so, as far as what would Joe and I do to maintain the property, nobody else purchasing property in the village gets asked, how are you going to maintain the trees on your property? Unfortunately, it's been neglected, even with the village owning it. There are dead trees along Deepwood Drive that needs to be removed. This is something the village should have done over the last couple of years, but they haven't, so of course we would do that. We would make it so that people could walk down Deepwood Drive and drive down Deepwood Drive without having to worry about a tree falling on them. We would have insurance for that as well, obviously. The majority of the plants and trees on the property are actually native species. However, there are many invasives. Ideally, those would be gradually removed so that they wouldn't choke out the healthy native stuff. We intend to maintain the property ourselves as long as we're privately owning it. We would maintain it ourselves and with the help of volunteers. This whole maintenance, our goal is not to have a manicured lawn at all. So this wouldn't need to occur all at one time. We would make sure that it would be safe to people passing by. The priority here is to protect it from destruction of development, and then remove the potentially hazardous trees along the roadside, and then finally to restore the land to a really healthy state through the gradual removal of those invasives, and then the addition of new healthy native trees that could grow up sort of over time, of course, and not just all one type. It would be a diverse bunch of trees that we would want to put in, and I would want to make that an opportunity for other people to participate in too. If somebody wanted to donate a certain kind of tree that would do really well in sort of a woodland with wet conditions. So I don't see any real validity for concerns about maintenance, especially given the state that it is in now and has been for the last couple of years.
John?
Yes, I have some questions. Can you hear me okay? I've got so many different ways I can mute my microphone here. I'm not sure if I'm muted or not most of the time. If I could, is Mr. Korndoerfer on this call, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I actually just received a text. He is on the call.
Okay. That's neither here nor there. I'm just curious. I'm hesitant to make this a conversation between the board and Kate and Joe, because our relationship at this point vis-a-vis this property is with Mr. Korndoerfer and his corporation. I understand that there is an agreement between his corporation and Kate and Joe for the potential purchase. But at this point, I haven't seen anything related to what are the specifics of that, other than I think it's 3.44 acres and a price. So like I said, I'm hesitant to get into a conversation. I know Kate and Joe, you feel, I think you said you felt a little bit taken aback by the fact that you're getting questions, but if I may ask some questions that will help me understand it better, I'd like to do that. So I've heard that Kate and Joe Maurer are purchasing the property. I've also heard that there is a nonprofit that's going to be purchasing the company. I've heard that there's going to be some sort of hybrid. So can you clarify for me who is purchasing the property? What is the entity, or who are the individuals that would be purchasing the property?
Okay, I'll answer that, Don. So initially, I and Kate are purchasing the property. It'll be in our name. I took money out of my bank account yesterday to make the earnest money, put the earnest money down, and we're going to hold on to the property for probably a few months. Simultaneously, we will be starting a 501c3, which we retained an attorney, Mr. Bob Hensel, who's helping us, and we'll be setting up a nonprofit, which will be taking donations from neighbors. And to be honest, we've already getting pledges. We're way more than halfway there already in 2 days. Having said that, I will own the property, and I have the money. I'm purchasing the property. Now, once the plan is, Hensel is once we raise enough money in the nonprofit, and the nonprofit will purchase the property back from myself and Kate, and we'll put it into conservation in perpetuity. That's the idea. So it can't be touched. We're going to make it ironclad that whatever we're buying is going to remain untouched.
Never for development.
That's the idea. So I'm not buying this for me. In fact, I pledged $25,000 of my own money. I plan on losing. It's just at the end it could be more if people don't help out. That's fine. It's $100,000, whatever. But I'm the one that's buying it, and I'm the one that will be putting my neck on the chopping block, and Kate, to make this happen. And we have no problems doing it.
Okay, so that's so you're underway now in terms of creating a 501c3 that will eventually purchase the property from you.
So, yeah.
That's helpful. That helps me understand that it would be some sort of a non-individual entity, a group of individuals. I assume a 501c3 has to have a board of directors and a mission statement. They have to have a 501c3 could change direction at some point, I assume. Is that am I mistaken there?
I don't know. I mean, Bob Hensel, we've made it very clear, this is still in its infancy, but we've made it pretty clear that it needs to be ironclad, that this is not touchable land. And I mean, that's what everybody wants, that's pledged money, some of it, a large sum of money, so we owe it to them to make sure that this is not going to be touched in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So can I infer from your response that you would be okay with the untouchability of the land being put into the deed itself?
I would want to talk to Bob Hensel because, that's sort of outside of our wheelhouse. But the overall plan for this land is to be preserved and not just to be kept as is with dead trees hanging over Deepwood Drive. That's not good for anybody. But to get it really healthy for the benefit of the wildlife that everybody enjoys and the birds, and then also for all the benefits that the people living around it enjoy.
So,
Yeah.
I just have one final question. I don't want to take up too much time. So once the nonprofit owns it and you've gotten it into some sort of better shape than it is now, do you anticipate that the individuals who are pledging money and donating money now would be able to use the property in any way? Would they be allowed to walk through it and walk on it? Or is it just you're setting it aside and cleaning it up so that people can walk down Deepwood past that property?
So, where we are right now, I would like to see the property serving there and healthy and not destroyed for the benefit, for like the natural benefit. I realized that if we were to put a trail in there, not only would there be some maintenance involved with that, but also some liability. And I think personally at this point, at this moment, that would also involve a lot more removal of trees and things to really make that area safe for people to go through with no liability concerns. And so for me right now, that's not something that I really want to consider.
Okay. Madam President, I've taken up too much time. I have some more questions, but I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
I'd like to turn it back to the other trustees in case any of you have any other questions. I'm sorry that neither Casey nor Brian are here. They're the two property-related trustees. So,
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, Janet.
First of all, I hope the trustees realize this will be not taxable. So,
What, Janet?
we are not going to receive taxes on it because it's the 501. Okay. And I just make a comment that, somebody in the past has referred to the path at the lighthouse to nowhere. Well, I'm not sure where this path that was just spoken about would go to. But anyway, I would like to move that we do not sell this to the preservation, and that the village board keep the Outlot and then renegotiate the contract with Korndoerfer for the part of the property that is being or wants to be developed at this time. Is there a second? So can we discuss it?
I'll second it.
My opinion is that we're not ready to make a decision like that at this point. There were a couple of questions that I needed to ask Kate before we got to this motion. So I would say that, and the reasons for that are, I think the concept is a good one, but I have some real reservations about the ability to raise all the money to buy it. No one would accept the sale if the people didn't have all the money to buy it. I mean, that's just, very clear. And the other is how a nonprofit like this that you're thinking about developing would stand the test of time as people move and move away and everything. I'm very worried about that and where that would go, because my fear is that the responsibility for the property would devolve back to the village. And then we have some issues of ownership, and those are my concerns about how this looks in the future. Any other comments on the motion?
Can I address what you just said?
Well,
it's not the one Brian and we're talking about.
It's kind of out of order, but Casey, what? I need help here. I need.
You could suspend the rules. I think you've asked the Maurers some questions. I think, from a standpoint of the village is always concerned. I can say that an example of the pathway. The pathway was built by who knows who privately at some point. This is the pathway between 4 Mile and 3 Mile. It has a little bit of a gap. As an example of something the village now maintains that they don't own. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of cost involved with that, but that's the concern. 10, 15 years down the road, potentially. I think that's probably a pretty accurate statement, Susan, is what you were kind of going for.
Yes, and I think the same thing applies to something like River Bend and some other areas like that in our area here. So, just go ahead and respond. Then we'll suspend the rules.
All right. Well, you mentioned the money and raising the money. It's not about raising the money, Susan. I have the money. It's in my checking account. I can write a check tomorrow for $100,000 and buy the property. So that's moot. The money that we're raising is to buy it back from me at a later date. So I'm not worried about that. You shouldn't worry about that either, because I don't think you go around asking other people that are buying property how they're getting the money or how they're going to maintain it and things like that. We're going to maintain it, and we have the money already to buy it. Is the day he closes. I wouldn't have given him $25,000 non-refundable and earnest money if I didn't have it. That would be ridiculous. And
could I ask you a question about that $25,000, Joe? I thought it was a short-term loan that you got.
No, I took it out of my own savings. That was my money.
We did get a short-term loan for the amount, but we also have. My husband works.
Yeah. So it turns out airline captains make pretty good money, and I can afford this land. It's not like I'm not going to be like completely destitute after this is done. I don't know what, and not to mention the viability of a nonprofit. Then why would any nonprofit ever start to begin with? I mean, that's just ridiculous. I'm sorry, but that's my 2 cents, and I'm just going to leave it there. So before I say something,
I've seen a number of nonprofits just evaporate, so it has to be a concern.
But I'm buying the property; it'll be mine. It's not like they're going to take
With or
back.
without a nonprofit, I mean, this isn't any different than if somebody bought a house with trees on their property. How would they maintain it? How has the village maintained it so far?
I guess I would ask the question: if you're developing this nonprofit and you want to raise money to buy it from you, who would own it eventually?
The nonprofit would own it. Bob Hensel, our lawyer, maybe we should be talking to him right now, because I don't enjoy discussing my personal finances on an open meeting, which is ridiculous. And I know that you called somebody today asking about it. So I think I'm going to talk to Bob Hensel. I'm going to shut up now.
So let's go back to we have a motion on the floor. I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
I
So we have 3 in favor. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, I believe it was Trustee Meissner, Trustee Berberg, and Trustee Hammes voted.
so the motion passes.
I am opposed.
And Trustee Glue and President Sanabria opposed.
That's correct.
Okay. Let me make sure I understood the motion here. The motion was to continue the village's ownership of that outlot, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But the board is okay with the plan, the concept plan as shown with 4 lots and an outlot, correct?
No, I think that should be up for consideration. I think because that's not feasible by Korndoerfer, maybe there has to be condominiums or whatever. So I don't think that we should be able to do the for housing, because that would not be financially feasible for him.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Madam President, if I may, I just want to express, I think, a point that you made, which is I like the fact that everyone is working toward a compromise.
Yes.
I'm not to the point yet where I feel I have all the information I need to make a decision one way or the other. Like I said, this just came up today or yesterday in the email from Casey. So I just want to learn a little bit more, and I'm looking forward to doing that.
Well, I was looking at that. I thought the concept was a good one. We were working towards a solution. I had some questions about the finances of it and the long-term viability of it. And like you, Don, I wanted to see if, perhaps by the time the Plan Commission meeting is, where those things could have been clarified, that the money was available and the plan was clear. But we've called the question. It's 3-2. Correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right.